Hello everyone and welcome back to day 3 of the Opera Euro Rapid Tournament. It's a pretty crazy game between Vidit and Magnus, and before we check it out, for those of you who don't know, I have revealed the meaning of the name agadmator. It's in my previous video, so if you guys are interested in that, do check it out. But now that we have that out of the way, we can now again focus on what's most important, and that is of course the chess. So without further ado, let's check out the game, as it's quite a nice one. Vidit has the white pieces and he opens with d4, and they're gonna play a very long theoretical line that's well known in the chess world, so we're not gonna dwell too much on the opening. d4, we have d5, c4, and now e6 going after some sort of a queen's gambit decline setup, knight to f3, and c6. We have the Slav defense. We have e3, and Magnus goes for f5, sort of a stonewall defense here, sort of a Slav stonewall. I think it's called the triangle system, but I mean, who knows? Whenever the pawns are like this, I call this the stonewall, regardless of what white plays, but don't do that. So f5, and now bishop to d3. Vidit continues developing, knight to f6, and now castles. We have bishop to d6, both players just continue developing pieces, and b3 now preparing to fianchetto the dark square bishop to this nice diagonal. We have queen to e7 by Magnus and bishop to b2. We have castles and now queen to c1. As the queen-bishop battery is placed like this, here Vidit wants to play bishop to a3 and trade off some pieces. So b6 by Magnus and now bishop to a3 as planned. We have bishop to b7 and now Vidit trades once. We have captures, and now queen to a3, immediately trying to trade everything off. So Magnus of course accepts this. He doesn't mind going into an endgame. Queen captures, knight captures, and now g6. So just strengthening all of the squares. At some point you might be able to play something like knight d7, then maybe you will have some breakthroughs with e5 or c5, or you know, depending on what white plays. So here rook f to c1 and knight b to d7, and there were some moves in the database where bishop to f1 was played, but here we have c captures on d5, and it is as of move 15 that we have a completely new game. So c captures on d5, we have e captures on d5 by Magnus, and now knight to c2. We have a5 by Magnus, and now a4. We have knight to e4, now getting that knight to a beautiful square here, and g3 by white. And now king to g7. Magnus starts improving the position of the king, as he knows at some point he might double rooks on the c file, push c5, and he wants his king to be as close as possible to the action. We have knight c to e1. And now rook f to c8 as planned, and now comes rook to c2. Vidit also wants to double his rooks on the c file, and now Magnus waits no longer and he executes c5. And here we have bishop to b5 by Vidit. A very nice move, as the knight on d7 is undefended, so Magnus needs to tend to that. He goes knight back to f8, the knight will be shifted over to e6, and now just rook a to c1. Saying that, okay, my rooks are now doubled here, you are more than welcome to go for c captures on d4. But Magnus says there's no rush, I'm just going to improve the position of my king a little bit. But this is going to prove problematic for Magnus, as Vidit finds knight to d3, and this is just extremely dangerous now. This knight can come to e5 in the future, and if the pawn captures, this knight can come to d4, so the knights are most excellently placed here. And here, Magnus, it's not easy to find a good move here for black, probably just improving the position with king to e7, but Magnus goes for c captures on d4, and this is problematic, as now Vidit can achieve an almost winning position if he finds the correct idea, but you are more than welcome to help him, so feel free to pause the video and try to find this elusive idea while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting bishop to c6. Also, for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, as this is just a monster move. So obviously you cannot ignore it, as the bishop here is under attack. So let's see what happens if, for example, rook captures on, or rather bishop captures on c6 is played. We're just going to trade here. Captures, captures, captures with check, as the king is on f6, also attacking the pawn here. And after king to f7, we're just going to recapture recapture the pawn here. And this is what I meant, as this knight is now a monster here. This knight is coming to e5, is going to be an even bigger monster, and it's just going to be a pretty bad position for black. Your b pawn is hanging, so if rook b8, you're just going to go knight e5 check, then the king moves, then you can do pretty much whatever here, and black will have a very passive position. So after bishop to c6, you do not want to capture the bishop. You could, however, defend your bishop, but it still runs into the pretty much same idea. Just captures, and after captures, there's also this check. So it's maybe a little bit better for black, as the b pawn is already defended, but still after the king moves, you're just going to recapture this, play knight to e5 check, and slowly mount the pressure. But it seems that Vidit did not enjoy this idea. After c captures on d4, Vidit just recaptured. He played knight captures on d4, and now Magnus was very much relieved, and he immediately traded everything off. Rook captures, and rook to c8. We have rook captures on c8, bishop captures, and now bishop to c6, going after the pawn here. So now Magnus has to play knight to c3 to defend it. We have knight to c3, and now here Vidit was up on time. Vidit had some 5 minutes on the clock, Magnus had some 3.5 minutes, but Vidit took over 3 minutes for his next move, and it's not an easy position. It's very hard to find a move here. Do you go knight f4, do you go h4, do you go whatever you play? It's not easy. Vidit decided to go for b4, but now Magnus finds a very tricky line. He plays knight to e6. And now Vidit, again, has to decide what to do. Best for Vidit is just a trade, captures, or rather even capture on d4 first, and then after the knight is recaptured, capture on a5. But Vidit did no such thing. After this knight to e6, he played knight to b3. And now Magnus has a move that will really pose problems for Vidit. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this idea. And I know you know that, you know what I want you to find, as it's the move we always discuss. So feel free to pause the video and try to spot this idea. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, as you do not spot this idea unless you're an extremely great endgame player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to d8. Now attacking the bishop, the pawn is defended, and the bishop doesn't have all that many squares. So here, bishop to a8, the only available square for the bishop, and now comes bishop to a6, attacking the knight here. And now the problem is, if you block with b5, then after bishop to b7, you have to trade, and after captures, you're going to have problems defending this a4 pawn. If knight to b2 defending, then these guys are stuck here defending. This guy is stuck defending the pawn, and this here knight cannot move because then the other knight attacks the pawn, and it's just game over. So this is not good for Vidit. So Vidit instead goes knight to f4. Now with a double attack on the d5 pawn, but now a captures on b4. We have knight captures on d5, this comes with check, knight captures, bishop captures, and now knight to e6. We have a5 by Vidit, and here Magnus captures, b captures on a5, knight captures on a5, and now knight to c5. So Magnus grabs hold of the b3 square with the knight, and now it's only a matter of shifting this bishop over to gain control of the b3 square. And here Vidit plays f4, now giving Magnus the opportunity to go for this maneuver. For some reason, Magnus goes bishop to b5 first. It seems like Magnus didn't get this idea right from the start. He played bishop to b5 first, and then he wants to play this, but it's basically wasting a move. But both of them were extremely low on time, so maybe he just played bishop to b5, and then he decided that he was going to go for that either way. But okay, king f2 by Vidit, we have bishop to d7, and now e4 by Vidit. Maybe king to e2 a little bit better, but in such a time scramble, who can make what's what. So here e4 by Vidit, and now f captures on e4. We have king to e3, as the e3 square has now been vacated for the white king, but now bishop to e6. And now you have problems. You can no longer capture, or rather recapture the pawn, because if knight captures, king captures, just b3. And if king to d3, now okay, the king can stop the pawn, but now the deadly king f5. And here the knight and the king have to tend to this b3 pawn. You're just gonna go all the way to h3 and gobble up all of the pawns, and it's an easy game. So after bishop to e6, Vidit said, okay, I have to capture on e6. He played bishop captures on e6, but now comes king captures on e6 and the king to d4. But now just b3. So of course you cannot capture the knight. If you capture b2 wins the game, there's no stopping the pawn. So here he played knight to c4, tried to stop the pawn from reaching the b2 square, but here Magnus just played knight to a4, and it was in this position on move 42 that Vidit resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Whatever you play, this is coming. Of course the king cannot even approach, and that's just it. There's no move here you can play. You could go for knight to d2, and then after b2 it seems like yes, you are stopping b1, but what move can you play here? There really are none. If you capture the pawn with the king, knight c3 check, and both squares are guarded, for example, king goes after the knight, you just promote into a queen, and now you have to captures, black is just up a piece. So whatever you do, you are losing this game. So of course Vidit knows this. After knight to a4, on move 42, Vidit resigned the game, and Magnus takes a win in the first game of the third day of the preliminaries. So it was pretty crazy. Vidit had an amazing position, but at a few points in the game he could have continued better, and definitely seized his opportunity to achieve much more than just a loss here after 42 moves. But yeah, I mean, that's chess. It's a rapid game. You know, you can always do better, I guess. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mario Brish, Linus Janssen, Andrew Click, Jacopo Signini, and Jason Klinger for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the third day, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.